How's it going, guys? Just finished up with the front brake service. I can't stress enough how important it is to brake in your brakes. Now, when you first drive your car, your brakes heat up. And what you're really doing in the very beginning is you're heating up this brake pad material. And what it does is it transfers a small film onto your rotor. So you're going to start seeing it gradually build up as you're driving on your new brakes. And these brake material will fill in all the pores in this crosshatch. After it transfers a film of this brake pad onto your rotor, essentially every time you step on the brake, your pad is actually making contact with the pad material itself. And that's the friction that's stopping your car. It's not the brake pad that's making contact with the rotor. It's really the brake pad making contact with the film of material it transferred to the rotor. And that is why when you change your pads, when you change your brake pads and don't change your rotor, there's a possible chance that you're putting different pad materials with the transfer film, and that'll cause squeaks. And that is why you always want to replace your rotors or resurface your rotors. Make sure your rotors are good to be replaced beforehand. You don't want to do this job twice. So as you can see, this rotor has a really dark film, and that is what this brake pad transferred over here. And the brake dust that you're dealing with is really this brake pad scraping off the film and transferring another film over. Now, if I were to not change this brake rotor and just slap new pads on of a different material, it may cause issues. You see these if I zoom into this rotor, you'll see a lot of ridges. It's not a flat surface. So if you put a brand new brake pad that's smooth on it,
so what you see here is a brake rotor that's extremely overheated. And when the brake rotor overheats, it creates this dark spots. And dark spots are pretty much like soft snow versus hard snow when you're snowboarding. When you go over hard snow, you slide a lot faster. And that's what's really happening when your brake pad is sliding over that hard spot in the rotor. And that's what causes the pulsation that you feel when you're stepping on the brake when you have hot spots on your rotor. Now looking at this photo, to the left, the unbedded rotor is what you'll find when you freshly resurface your rotors. If you use a microscope and you look really deep, you'll see a lot of peaks, high peaks and low peaks. And to the right is after it's well bedded. As you can see, the dark film that's transferred over by the brake pad. When you're bedding in your brakes, they never want you to hold your brakes down, and especially if you're holding it down hard. And that's because your brake pad is really hot. So when you're holding on to, like say in the red light, and you're holding on to your brakes after you heat up your brake pads, and there hasn't been a film that's transferred to your rotor yet, now that spot that you're holding onto, now it'll imprint that brake pad onto your rotor. And that's going to leave a mark that is going to be, if you go on the highway and you step on your brakes, you're going to feel a pulsation. And that's not a warped rotor. Most of the time, warped rotors are really just the indifference of the brake pad film that's transferred to your rotor. You'll have spots that have more and you'll have spots that have less, which is why when you're stepping on the brake, your coefficient of friction is changing